Hey everyone, welcome to a new video. In this video we're going to be looking at timelines. The main reason for this is because I recently made some videos about targeting, so single targeting and multi-targeting, and although the system was really good, how it snapped onto players was quite aggressive. So you'd go from aiming from here to here really quick, and it looked it wasn't perfect. It wasn't perfect. So there needed to be a way to smoothly pan the camera over to the target, just so it wasn't as sort of jarring to look at. And effectively, at the end of this video, I'll put a timestamp or a sort of like I can't remember what it's called now. It's like a time code down below for that part. But effectively, I want to talk over timelines whilst I'm here, just to make a bit of a video out of it. But the time code down below is the fix to make things smoother. But I'll give you a demo of it anyway, just so you can understand a little bit about how timelines work. So effectively, what a timeline can be used for is multiple things really, but let's say you want something to move smoothly from one place to another, or if you want a value to change from sort of like 10 to 20, but you want it to be like, you don't just want to go 10, 20, you want to go 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, all the way up. If you want to smoothly transition between two values, timelines are really valuable. So for example, or the most common reason I use them is for sort of animations in a sense. So here I've got sort of like a sample door, let's call it, and it's a sliding door. So when I approach the door, I use a timeline to move its position from one place to another nice and smoothly. So a quick example of that, you walk into the door slides up out of the way, I go through, and then the door slides back into position. And this is using a timeline just to make, I've got effectively two positions. I've got where I currently am and where I want to be. And I use a timeline to say gradually move towards that, that second value. So the door moves up, and then shortly after the door moves down. Equally as well, you can make obviously platforms with this. So I've got a little platform here, which just on a loop just moves backwards and forwards. So jump on here, jump off, and that just keeps moving backwards and forwards. That has no sort of like trigger, it's just constantly running all the time. And then again, that's obviously using a timeline to go back, and then it just reverses the same thing and it just moves backwards and forwards. And then the reason that I'm making this video essentially is originally I had sort of like this targeting system where you can see it snaps on really aggressively. Like it just goes from where I was looking to the target really quickly, and I needed a smoother way of doing that. So now you can see that using, well, you can't see that yet, but using a timeline, I've been able to make that transition smoother. So all I'm going to do here is I'm going to aim here. I'm going to press just the shift key, which is my keyboard thing, and you can see that it's transitioned smoothly to that target. And now my character's fixed. So if this is interesting to you anyway, I'll put a card up above now so you can watch that video. But just be aware there are two videos, one for multi-target, which you can sort of work through sort of a whole range of people like this, or you can go to single target. Anyway, I've just froze my engine, so I'm going to pause the video here if I can find my mouse, and I've really broke this. I'm going to pause here, going to sort of get the project set up. Anyway, enough of that. We'll see you in a sec. Okay, so not too sure what happened there then. Everything seemed to just freeze up and I lost my mouse, so apologies for that. But here we are, we're in the engine now, we're in our floating platform, and I'll just talk over the bits and pieces and then finally we'll make one. So what we've got, as you can see, it's just a platform moving backwards and forwards. Now what makes this happen is there's a couple of things, and if you're not familiar with all of the pieces, then I'll throw in some extra bits here for you. So we've got an event timer, which is just something that you can use to set up a loop, or something that you want to trigger after a set period of time. by using this on a loop, I'll just give you this as a Brucey bonus. Using this on a loop is far better than using a tick. If you need something to loop or happen all the time, you're better off using one of these timers with like 0.2 seconds, 0.1 second, because you can cancel this this timer if you need to, and having lots of things on ticks is not good. So timers are really good for that. But anyway, I'm not going to get into that too much. So we've got a timer. So event begin play starts the timer. Then anything that you need after the timer you can sort of set up there, mainly being you can promote the actual return value from the timer as a variable, and this is a timer handle. Again, this is additional, and then inside that timer you can have clear and invalidate. That's effectively stop. So if you need to stop it, that's what you can call to stop that timer. But anything that you need after a timer just happens. And then the timer, it says timer by event. So effectively, the event is what's going to be triggered every time, or every quantity of time, and then it's going to loop. And there are a few other things that you can do, sort of like add a delay to the first time that it runs and stuff like that. But effectively, it's just something that creates a loop. So every 3 seconds, we're going to call this move platform event. That's going to go into a flip-flop. A flip-flop is just a switch. Once it'll be A, next it'll be B, then it'll be A, then it'll be B. So every time you call it, it'll flip-flop between which option it's going to trigger, which is really useful with a timeline because you've got to start from beginning, or play from start, and then reverse from the end. So effectively, play, reverse, play, reverse. So you can create these loops with it. Okay, so you've got a timeline, and notice there's sort of a float value which I've named alpha. So this is the value that's actually going to change as the timeline plays and reverses. So for example, if I start at 0 and end at 1, over the time frame that I've set, it's going to slowly increase the value until it gets to 1, and then it's finished. And then if I choose to reverse it, it'll go from 1 back to 0. And what that's really useful for is nodes like Lerp. So a Lerp is linear interpolate, and effectively what that means is it's going to transition one value to another value based on an alpha. So as the description rightly says, it's going to be 100% of A when alpha is 0, and when alpha becomes 1, it becomes 100% of B. So effectively, you want your alpha to go from a value of 0 to 1, and then over a time frame. And then what it's going to do is it's going to slowly change this A value to become this B value, which is really useful because you can take your current location as your A value. So we're going to move from A to our B value. And then for my B value, I've just took my current location, added 270 sort of units to it, and that becomes my B. So effectively, I'm going to move 270 away, and then when I reverse it, I'm going to move 270 back and be back in the position that I started on. Sorry, I keep knocking the microphone. It's absolutely massive. And then finally, obviously, we're setting the actor's location at the end. So I hope that makes sense. On the event begin play, we're also taking the current location, because if you just plug in the get actor location, this is going to get the location every time. So effectively, you'd constantly keep adding 270, and it's not going to work the way you expect. And before you know it, your floating platform is whizzing off through your game uncontrollably. So that's the floating platform. The sliding door is very similar. So the back end of it is very similar in the fact of I've got a timeline transitioning from a current location to sort of 210 units higher, so it moves my door out of the way. Obviously you can go to the left or to the right, that's absolutely up to you. And then we're setting location. Slight difference here though is I don't have a timer because it's not looping, it's triggered by me walking into it. So we just get our current location at event begin play, and then how the timeline triggers is based on overlap events. So if we go to the viewport, you can see that I've got just a cube, a door, for example, and there's a collision box or a box collision sort of sticking out of it. And this box collision, for some reason, why is everything grayed out? I think I've broke Unreal Engine. This is really weird. Anyway, on a box collision, normally you'd be able to scroll down on this details panel, and at the bottom there is an event called Event Begin. What's it called? On component begin overlap, and then obviously the opposite of that is sort of component end overlap. So when I stand in this box, I'm creating this overlap event. This triggers, plays my timeline, which moves my door out of the way. And then obviously I'm not going to be overlapping that door anymore because it's in the sky. I just set a rough 3 seconds to then bring the door back down. So it's kind of like an automatic door. So if I was stood underneath it, it would crush me. I guess that's something you're just going to have to watch out for in my particular game. But there's nothing to stop you from setting just the cube itself. So I'm setting the entire actor, but you could tell just the door itself to move up and down. I'd love to show you, but for whatever reason, Unreal's decided to die. I'm curious of this though. I feel like it thinks the game's running. I'm just going to pause here and restart because I kind of need these event graphs. Okay, so I'm not entirely sure what was going on there. I think whatever issue I got into earlier just sort of affected the whole engine. Okay, so I've talked over those now. So I think what we should do is just make a quick one. Let's make a sort of a floating platform, or I don't know, something that blocks us, or maybe like something that pops out of the wall here and pushes me off this ramp as I'm trying to run up it. Something like you'd expect on a platformer game as an obstacle. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to right click, create a blueprint class, go to actor class, and I'm just going to put this as obstacle like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a cube to start with. I like to change this cube's static mesh to a chamfered cube, which is the rounded cornered one. It just looks a little prettier. I'm going to change its color to basic 3 so it's very obvious. And I'm just going to adjust its size a little bit just so it's not as big. So maybe 0.2 and 0.2. So it's just like a little ram that's going to poke out and push us. Okay, so that's absolutely fine. And then we're going to go to the event graph now and tell it to move automatically. So over to the event graph. So we don't need any of these. We just need event begin play. And because we're going to do a looping animation of it moving backwards and forwards, we're going to do an event timer. So timer by event. How quick do I want this to move? I'm going to say every 5 seconds, and we're going to loop. So every 5 seconds, we're going to trigger this event. What event are we going to do? It's going to be a custom event, and that custom event is going to be, I don't know, move wall, something like that, or push player. It doesn't really matter. From that, then we're going to need a timeline. So if you just type in timeline, you'll see at the bottom with the little clock, add timeline. I'm just going to press enter. I'm not going to change the name of this timeline. And then to actually get into it, to add sort of like a time span or sort of like an animation, you just want to double click on it. So now we're in the timeline editor, let's call it. And what you want to do is you want to add a track up at the top. Now there's different tracks you can add, but what I suggest to start with is just let's add a track length. Now, because my timer is going to loop every 5 seconds, it makes sense to have the length of your timeline at 5 seconds as well. Because if your timer triggers sooner than your timeline's finished, it'll snap to the sort of the next animation and it won't look right. So we're going to add a track, and you can see we've got event track, color track, vector track, and float track. So what we're going to do is just add a float track in this instance. It's probably the most popular and the one that you'll use the most often, and I'm going to appropriately name it alpha. The reason I'm calling it alpha is because if you use a Lerp node, the float value that it expects will be also named alpha, so it makes sense to sort of name them the same. So what we've got here is we've got a timeline, and if I just press these buttons, you'll see that it goes from, I'll zoom out. You see that it goes from 0 to 5. And obviously you can change this track length however you want, but it's going to loop through 5 seconds because of that length. And at the moment there's no value added onto it. So by holding the shift key or double clicking, I just hold shift because I'm used to it. I'm going to put 2 points on the timeline. I'm going to select my first point, and I'm just going to change the time to 0 and keep the value at 0 as well. Because that's effectively, I've not started and I've not done anything. And then I'm going to click on my my other sort of point. I'm going to change this time to 5 because that's the end of my timeline. And I want a value. So because I'm using a Lerp, which goes from 0 to 1, which is the equivalent of 100% of A, and then 1 becomes 100% of B, I'm just going to put 1. I don't need anything different than that. And then to make it look a little bit nicer, what you can do is click on these buttons, which will make it fit the exact timeline to your screen. And then you can see here that there's a line that slowly, gradually builds up. So as time goes on, so about 2.5, you should be at 0.5, which is appropriate. And then obviously up at the top, at the 5 time point, you've got a full 1 value. But this is just going to go very linearly, straight up. That's absolutely fine, but you may want to smooth it out just a little bit more. And what you can do is you can right click on your first point, and if you change it to auto, what that'll do is that'll give you a nice gradual curve in and out. So it'll smooth in and smooth out your animation, and it just looks a little bit better because effectively your moving platform will set off a little bit slower but then catch up and then gradually slow down as it meets its end point. You might not want that. You might want it to be very abrupt and be exactly like that, but mine's more of a gradual, sort of like a swing kind of thing. I prefer that effect, but you can go with whatever you want. So because we went into the timeline, we now just need to either go back to the event graph or just close the timeline. It's up to you. And you can see now that we've got this alpha output node. Okay, so from that, what we need to do is every time, or should I say, when this timeline is playing, it's going to be triggering this update execute each time. So we'll drag out of that and we'll say set actor location. And obviously we're going to need a new location for that. So what we'll do is we'll drag off that, and I'm going to type in Lerp. Because we've dragged off a vector, it's obviously automatically recognized that the Lerp that you're going to want is a vector. But just so you're aware, there are several different Lerps. You can do rotor transform vectors, you can Lerp floats, it doesn't really matter. There's probably one for all of them. So I'll just do Lerp again, get the vector Lerp. And then you can see here it says alpha, so we'll plug the alpha in. And again, from the start, we're going to be at 100% A. And then as our alpha transitions to the 5 second mark, which will be the value of 1, we're going to be on B. So A is going to be where we currently are, and B is going to be where we want to be. And then when we reverse it, we're going to obviously do the whole animation in reverse. So what's a good idea is let's get the actor location, and let's just promote that to a variable right at the beginning. Promote to variable and put current location. Plug it in. The reason being is because we want to save the location at the beginning. Because if you plugged in get actor location here, when this becomes B, this get actor location will be the same as B, and it'll effectively just add your B value up and up, and your platform will just disappear. So that's not a good idea. But instead what we want is get current location. That's going to be our A. Whoops, let's just move that over here. And then I just need to add a value to this for its end position to be. I actually don't really know. Let's see what position we're in here. So I'm going to move on the x-axis. So let's add, and I don't know, what should we go for? 75. I think that might be enough for our wall. So I'm going to add 75 to our current location, and that's going to be our B location. Okay, so when we move the wall, we want it to play, and then the next time we want it to reverse. So what's a good idea is if we use that flip-flop node, as I mentioned earlier, every time we come through here, it'll go through A first, and we actually want to play from the start, and then the next time we want to reverse from the end. So we'll just plug them two into there, and that should be it. So if we hit compile and go to the viewport, nothing will happen, but if I hit simulate, is it going to work? Nope. Picks and chooses how it wants to do it. But let's drop it into our world. So let's pop that in here. I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. Move that over, maybe, I don't know, there like that. Hit play, and let's go and check it out. Ooh. Okay, did I forget something? Let's move that out here so we can see it. Let's run over to it quick. Okay, so okay, so we need to do it on the Y, 75. And I tell you what, 75 over 5 seconds is not a lot of speed. So let's change this to 1 second. Let's go into our timeline, change the length of this to 1 second, and then let's pick our top node up at 5 here. Let's change the time now to 1. Let's smooth that out. Hit compile. Let's go back and play it, and let's see what it looks like now. Okay, so that's what I expected. So obviously I got the X value from in here. Oh, so now you simulate. I got the X-axis from there, but obviously in the world that becomes the Y. Anyway, so let's pop that in the wall now. Let's press play. Oh, and then it pushes me off the wall. Whoop. Okay, so the collisions fight a little bit, but you get the point. That's pretty much it, to be honest. Now, before I leave this video, I said that I'd show you the correction for... did I pick a character? Bob. The correction for the snapping on the weapons. So this is for everyone that followed through on the other video. And obviously now I can't find my character. Here we go. Okay, sweet. So if you've watched the other video, you may have already built the sort of targeting system, which pretty much ends around here. Yep, so you pretty much end around here. What I've done is where the event timer triggers, which basically then snaps your look direction to the target. Just before we run all of this, what I do is I use a Lerp. Well, firstly, I set an ignore look input, which basically when you set an ignore look input, if I move the mouse, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't look around. So whilst I'm sort of smoothly transitioning to my target, you can't mess that up by wiggling your mouse around, just to make it look a little bit nicer. Then what I do is I use a timeline, funnily enough, to lerp the rotation from my character's rotation to my target's sort of the direction I need to be looking at my target. You'll understand that if you've watched the previous video. So we lerp from sort of where we are to where we want to be. We set the world rotation of the camera, and we also set the controller's rotation, so the controller is aware that we've actually changed angle, so your keys still line up. Again, that'll make sense if you've watched the video. And then once this timeline is finished, we just set the ignore look input to false, so you can have control of your mouse again. But you will be fixed into this targeting, so technically you won't have control of your mouse. But when you sort of come out of targeting, you will again. So again, I'll just go over this. If I hit shift, you'll see that it slowly transitions over. I'm wiggling my mouse. Oh, you can see that I can sort of argue with the targeting a little bit. Should give you a bit of freedom. But if I press shift here and wiggle my mouse, nothing's happening. But if I untick the ignore look before the smooth transition, you'll see that I can sort of argue with it, and then it gets difficult to argue with. So it's not very nice. Just tick that, keep it on there. So effectively, this is what you need to add at the end of your sort of timer event. You can ignore this. This is just for my sort of target to come up on the screen, just to give you sort of visual feedback that you are in targeting mode. The timeline, I did it over 2 seconds. You can adjust this to your liking. You can have it with 1 second if you prefer. Well, 2 second, it was very obvious that it's doing the transition at 2 seconds. 1 second is fairly obvious, but it's, I don't know. I wanted to exaggerate it for this video. So that's pretty much it for this one. Really, I just wanted to cover that smoothing of the camera, but I wanted to sort of flesh it out a little bit and sort of give some more information to everyone, just so that it's not a 2-minute video for one single purpose. It's sort of multi-purpose video. If you've watched all of it, I appreciate that. Thank you for watching. If it was helpful, please consider liking the video, and feel free to put any feedback down in the comments. If you want to put feedback about this video, or if you want to chat about anything else, or something I can build on this, or if there's any questions on anything really, that's what the comments are for. And if you want to go into a lot more detail or send screenshots or videos or anything like that, please consider joining the Discord down below. There's loads of us, and it's usually pretty active. So you can sort of ask your questions there as well. That's it. So thanks for now, and I'll see you in another one. Cheers, bye.